Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I am happy to be back providing an LTC webinar. Um, so I am Bryn, and I am the co-founder of the Kikori platform. Um, and last time I provided a webinar, um, I didn't exactly know what the Illinois learning technology community was like. And so hopefully, this webinar is a little bit better suited to you all as a learning community. So thank you for being here. Again, my name is Bryn Lodig, and I'm one of the Kikori co-founders. I'll explain what that is, but today we're just going to talk about what it means to engage students online. Me and my co-founder, Kendra Bostic, the two of us were both involved in education in a little bit of a different way. So she's a school social worker and was working in the Chicago school districts, and really finding that some of her students were dealing with issues and the ways that they needed to engage were not really served in traditional education structures. And what she found was that using experiential based activities, so activities where you seemingly play a game or do a thing but then tie it back to another learning target, was the way that best served her kids. And I was working in the camp industry and running challenge courses and working with these school groups, and we'd have these incredible aha moments where, somebody who was never seen as a leader before all of a sudden became a leader out on the challenge course, or maybe somebody who was too small to really excel in certain sports became the best climber up this telephone pole, or somebody else became this really good problem solver when we were doing riddles and puzzle games. And I hated to see that learning end when they left property. And Kendra really had this vision for making an app, because everything was an app. And so we made a database of activities, and it has come to life. And so I want, giving that along with that really amazing introduction that Matt gave, I want to hear a little bit more about you. So I want to know who is here, where do you live, and what populations do you work with? So I would love to see that come in through the chat. So I want you to continue, hey Lori, to use the chat. This is a tool for you. And we're going to be talking about how to engage students online. You guys are forever learners. You're lifelong learners, and a tool that can be used to engage when you're online, especially for somebody like me who is just talking to the void. The chat is a tool for all of us to stay engaged. So I want you to actively, or this is my invitation to you, to actively contribute to the conversation, because I am no more qualified than any of you to be leading a webinar. I can simply share my experience and my stories, but everybody's story and experience is valid. And so I want you to contribute here and using the chat, talk to each other, and let's see what we can learn from one another today. So I also chose this map because it outlines some of the Native communities throughout the world. And I like to start with my own land acknowledgement, recognizing that an acknowledgement is not a reparation, but that I live, work, and play on the ancestral lands of the Lake Superior Band of Chippewa Indians. And they stewarded this land long before me or my ancestors were here. And so the land remembers, and the land knows who cared about it. And I encourage you to learn more about the land that you are on, and incorporate place-based, culturally relevant information and practices and stories into your education practice. Um, so thank you. I would love if you guys want to, in the chat, go ahead and say a little bit more about the land on which you live, work, play, or recreate. I'm gonna pause here. So if you haven't heard of Kikori, and you don't have it, this is an opportunity for you to get it on either your Android or Apple mobile device. It also works on desktop. So go ahead and throw in the chat if you've heard of Kikori, if you're using Kikori, or if you're planning on downloading it. And I will hold this slide for just a moment longer before we move on. And there we go. We've got a web link right there in the chat as well as on the screen. So another quick poll, raise a hands. I can't see you guys. But maybe say I in the chat if this is your first time using StreamYard. I have not done StreamYard before. So this is a great thing where I'm learning new technology, and maybe you're learning about Kikori as well as StreamYard along with me. Great. So talking about engaging students online, the first topic I wanted to talk about was the importance of forming norms. So forming norms, I want you to create a normative schedule. Students find a lot of comfort and security in predictable structures and routines. And as you're introducing new routines, I wanted to remind you to provide practice time. So it's really important that if you are setting up an online classroom and you say, hey, every day we're going to come in and we're going to do XYZ. I want you to have cameras on, mics off, maybe have this question is up on your screen and they can put it into the chat. Whatever that normative culture is, make sure that you allow time to practice, and practicing the same sequence helps your students to become familiar with what to do in that situation. In an online format, it's really important to use visual supports, not just your audio, but pictures or charts to help reinforce what your norms are. And making sure that you determine ahead of time what procedures you want and that it is well laid out so that you're not wasting time explaining things and you can just implement it right away. So if you're going to be implementing a new routine, make sure that you plan and teach that new routine. And then remove things that aren't working effectively. It is okay to try it, change it, try it again, while still being predictable. So some of the activities that I use to teach those same concepts, some of them are done in person. Eye contact tag is a really great one for setting parameters, and all of the instructions are in the app. And this one doesn't lend itself particularly well to playing online, but some of the debrief does. So Key Punch is an activity where you can use it to form norms. If you're in and I'm not sure you could do it here on StreamYard, but I assume that you're not teaching on StreamYard. So for those of you who are engaging the chat, tell me more about what platform it is that you are teaching within. Are you teaching on Zoom? Are you in Google Classrooms? Because some of that will dictate which activities I talk about for each of the content points that I make. Key Punch is a really great one that you can use uh, in online platforms like Gather, um, and Spatial Chat. Ones where you get like an avatar and you can move your avatar around the screen. And basically, Key Punch is an experiential social emotional learning activity where you have to tag something in an order. Think of like Simon, remember that game that we used to play when we were little with the buttons that would light up in the different colors and you had to punch them in an order and you had to keep building on the sequence. That is what Key Punch is. And it's a really great activity, but you can do it within Zoom if you're on something like, um, oh, it's the one where you use Post-its. I'm waiting for somebody to jump in the chat and tell me. But Spatial Chat and Gather work really well. Jamboard, yes. Yeah, you can do it on Jamboard too, where you would like rearrange or manipulate things. You can also do collaborative puzzles on Jamboard, which is super fun. But basically, then the debrief of the activity is what routines did we create to make us successful? How does that help us know what to do and when? How do we know when it's our turn? Not when we're just playing this game, but when we are actually doing the academic learning during our classroom or instructional time. Um, this is another sort of content area that I like to talk about with Kikori. So the Kikori platform really helps with rewilding activities. And so I did a whole webinar based on getting students outside. And I think that you can still engage students in going outside even when you're teaching virtually. So this was during April, which is, Earth Day and Earth Month. And there's just so many benefits of being outside. And even if you're teaching online, there's a way that you can engage students and still go outside. So on this slide, it just talks about all the benefits of being outside. And you could have them go for a hike and then report back out, or take their phone with them on a hike and talk about it. Camouflage is a game where you would spend time in the wilderness, and you sort of it's an awareness activity. And when you become more aware of things outside, what more are you also aware of with academics? So a nature collage, maybe you have them go outside and grab something and bring it to their online class. And especially if you're engaging students from a variety of different ecosystems, it might be really interesting to talk about what different things they bring to the table. I live in the woods, and so maybe this time of year I would bring a leaf, but if somebody else lives, in the South, they would bring some sand. Somebody else might bring a chunk of concrete because they live in an urban area. And we can talk about how we come from different areas, but we're all sort of moving towards the same goal. Same with like a scavenger hunt. If you send them out on a brain break or a brain boost and say, hey, I want you to go on a scavenger hunt, go outside and find something that fits in the palm of your hand, or find something that's soft and bring it back and share it on the camera, or find something that is spiky. And so a different way to just engage different senses, but still then build off of, your learning here online. Another topic that we talk about often is using a growth mindset, ending the year on a high note. So bringing back the basic belief that you can sort of uh, defer in your initial talents and aptitudes, but everyone can change and grow through application and experience. So, and that is really what the Kikori platform was founded on, was this eSEL method. So every activity that is on the platform, regardless of who submitted it and what type of activity it is, it follows the experiential learning cycle. And the experiential learning cycle starts with an active experience. And so that's play, and then reflection, connection, and then growth. And basically, it is said that we learn not from experience, but from reflecting on experience. And when we reflect on that experience and we choose to connect it to other areas of our life, we have the opportunity to grow in an intentional direction of our choosing. And so here's a bunch of different ways to develop your growth mindset. And maybe in an online format, in a virtual class, people are really struggling because they feel so disconnected. And so you can label what it is that you're feeling and doing. And that gives you power. So acknowledging your growth and your improvement, celebrating success. And all of these things can be taught and practiced using online activities. And so just reframing a memory. If somebody says that they believe that they're not good at math, uh, maybe it's just untangling that spaghetti of that narrative and making sense of it and saying, you know what, you are good at math, and these are the ways that you're good at math, and let's break it down and let's talk about these things. Reframing past events really kind of helps us navigate our own trauma or our students' trauma. And so one of the things that we can do is practice signing with the opposite hand. And really, the more we sign with our non-dominant hand, the better we get at it. And sometimes this is a great activity to do with our students, really easy to do virtually, is if they're struggling, just stop what you're doing. And I want you to sign your name with your non-dominant hand. And then have them do it again. And even again, and maybe even 5 more times. And hopefully by the end, the their signature will get cleaner. And so then you can have that discussion about how they practiced and they're forming that memory. And so I'm sorry, I'm thrown off trying to navigate too many things. But their math practice can be like their signature, is that if you break it down into incremental steps, it can become more habitual and more of a memory. And so there's all kinds of stories and cases of people who have overcome ridiculous challenges. Maybe somebody who was an amputee and learned how to play the piano with their feet, or learns how to function with one hand. And so if those people have harnessed that power of a growth mindset, this is an activity that you can use virtually that will help them with their online instruction. Maybe doing a virtual body scan while they're, here with me and you. If I asked you right now to uncross your feet, uncross your hands, maybe float your eyes closed, and just do a body scan. How are you feeling? Am I feeling anxious that I'm presenting a webinar? Especially when I don't have the feedback of somebody else's video looking back at me, and where am I storing that in my body? And how can I address that so that I can continue to learn? Um, how can your students address that so they can continue to learn? Um, and so another thing to keep students engaged online is really, really making sure that there is student to student rapport. That when you are in an environment like this, especially even me right now, um, talking to you as an individual, I'm guessing that you are feeling isolated from the other webinar participants or the other students in this course. And peer to peer engagement and rapport significantly impacts that learning process. So, utilizing breakout rooms and partner activities, creating a space for them to have a relationship with one another outside of that relationship with just you and the screen is so important. Um, Perhaps they teach each other a skill in their breakout rooms, or they do a project together. And so that peer to peer relationship will engage your students, and you can lead different activities to practice gratitude. Maybe it's giving shout outs to one another, or maybe it's one person's name and everybody has to go around the circle and say something nice about them, or something that they've noticed. Um, and even to have that, like, maybe unstructured discussion time is a way to have downtime in a virtual setting. So, creating space for them to be authentic with one another. Um, some of the games that we play, and I've been able to do this online, is playing rock, paper, scissors in a breakout room, over Zoom. And one of the best ways to do it is to play rock, paper, scissors, but instead of rock beating, scissors and scissors beating paper, is that instead of trying to beat the other person, you're trying to match the other person. The importance of matching the other person means that you're on the same team, that either you both win or you both lose. And there's a, a bonding that then happens, and it accelerates that team dynamic. Another activity that you can do um, is doing a finger count version. And so having all 5 fingers in play, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then trying to get them to play rock, paper, scissors so their fingers add up to a number. Um, so unique and common, put them in a breakout room together and figure out in maybe 2s or 3s or 4s, what is the most unique thing that they have in common with one another that nobody else in the room can say. And it was fun because the last time I did this webinar, Matt and I played these games and we found out some really great stuff. Um, and so another thing that Kikori can help with is teaching stick-with-it-ness. Stick-with-it-ness is the ability to keep working towards a goal even when it's hard. And so we're talking about basic needs being met as an educator. I know you've seen Maslow's hierarchy, but how does that affect their ability to learn in your program? Is that one of the causes of their disengagement? Um, and how are they motivated? What types of motivation are you providing in your course? And so, are you providing any autonomy? Are you providing any choice? Because those two things influence their motivation. If they're not feeling motivated, they're more likely to disengage. And it's much harder to re engage them once you've lost them. And so giving students choice really helps. Like, hey, this is the things we have to do today. What order do you want to do it in? Um, and making sure that you're giving positive feedback. So everybody likes it when you talk pretty to them. So A lot of times in education, uh, and we've seen this even in parenting, that we try to prevent people and students and children that we care about from failing. And so if we're preventing them from failing, and we're not challenging them, they're not gonna grow. And so some activities that can be done, to help promote some of these things that are found on Kikori, one of those is called turnstiles, and turnstiles is like a jump rope game. Traffic jam is another one that can be played really well on, Gather or, Spatial Chat. Same with Pathfinder. And all of these activities that I've talked about throughout these different core concepts that are provided with these experiential social emotional activities, are found in activities that have been proven and validated by different authors, and they put them on our platform. And so we're a community sourced platform, and those activities are just examples. But we have over 1,000 activities on the platform, and you can search for them, but they're all aligned with standards. So CASEL's, collaborative for academic and social emotional learning standards, UNESCO's 20 or UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals, and then 21st century skills. And all of these things are what the emerging workforce is saying is lacking in current students, or this growing workforce as they enter, into their professional careers. And so again, it follows that learning cycle. So all of these activities have multiple layers of engagement, and they can be done online as well as in person. But really it's keeping them engaged, and the most important thing then is after you do the activity is you reflect and you make the connection from this game, this initiative, this puzzle, this activity to other places in their life, which is where that social emotional learning is happening, and then to grow in the direction that they want and reapply it either in a similar scenario or in a different one. So talking about, hey, when you got frustrated doing this puzzle, how is that like when you got frustrated doing maybe a math assessment? And what strategies did you use solving a puzzle that you can then use during this assessment? Um, and so every activity, regardless of who's submitted it, has built-in reflection questions. As an early educator, this was the part that I really struggled with. When I was like, "Okay, we just did a thing, but I don't know how to tie it up in a bow. I don't know how to bring it back around." And so not only do we provide the prompts within the activity, but we provide them in this same structure. So regardless of who the author of the activity is, every single activity has reflect, connect, grow questions. And so the one that's on the screen is an example of how you would debrief, and the goal is to reinforce optimism. Here are some nice things that people have said, and a zero cost way to support the platform, is to share on social media. And I'm gonna stop sharing that screen, and I'm gonna jump into the actual app on my phone and give a brief tour. All right, thanks for sticking with me. I appreciate you. So I'm in my map. Um, are any of you guys Friends? Friends, the TV show? It's like my very favorite, and I quote it all the times. So, uh, there's an episode where Joey, he says, "So I'm in my map," and so I'm in my app, and I say this a lot, but, yes, pivot. So I'm in my app, and when you enter into the app, and maybe you saw this when you downloaded it, you land in the Discover Activities page. And as you scroll, you can see all these different categories of activities. And so now I've given you all of these different sort of goals from the activities, either getting into nature or peer to peer relationships. Um, Sometimes it's even just forming norms. So these are start your day announcements, National Day activities, and these carousels or sliders, just like Netflix. Each of these white cards is an activity. And so you can either find what you're looking for using these sliders, or right when you get to the bottom here, you can look by this category and you can see that it says the word browse. So you can browse by just scrolling through. And we say browse because it's not a search until you search either in this bar. And what we found is that we make data driven decisions. Luckily, as a startup, we're able to do that. But people were using this search bar more like Google than they were anything else. And so we thought they would search by like titles or keywords. No, they're like, I want to know how to do this. And so we've adjusted how our search bar works, that you can type in a question or something and it will try and find a match. Otherwise, you can come in here and edit the activity length, maybe the activity energy level. So one is walking, uh, or sitting, walking, running. If you can see how I'm clicking on you guys can't see as I move my mouse, but as I click on the different lightning bolts, a one energy is sitting, walking, running. You can see by age, by materials. So if I have middle school and I need a 3 energy activity, I'm going to hit apply and it's going to give me a bunch of different activities. And so these activities then all fit that category. If there's too many choices, go ahead and add more filters. If Oh, you guys, I love this game. Um, if there's too many choices, add more filters. If you don't get enough hits, go ahead and go back and remove some filters. But these are, all 3 energies. So a lot of tag games, a lot of gross motor type activities, which is going to be very different than if I say I want a 35 to 40-minute activity and I only want 1 energy, or even if I reset and I say, I want a 35 to 40-minute activity, and I don't even click on an energy level, but I have the same group of middle schoolers. But the things that I want to work on are my relationship skills of communication and teamwork. And when I hit apply, a whole bunch of different activities are going to come back that are not the same as those gross motor or tag games. And so that is how our filter works. But for those of you who only work virtual, why don't you go ahead and drop in the chat if you're virtual, if you're in person, or if you're a hybrid. But if I type in virtual activities, here's all the different activities that are specifically written for me to teach in a virtual format. So when I go in here and I can look, and it'll give me prep. So step-by-step prep, play, along with variations sometimes, or facilitator trips, tricks and tips. Haha. So prep, play, and then here under this learn tab are your reflect, connect, grow questions. You can also find variations of that activity, or you can drill down to see all the different CASEL standards it meets or the 21st century skills. So when you come back out of here and you reset your filters, that is how you find an individual activity. But we also have, and maybe you saw this when I was sharing some of my other webinar content, we have playlists, and playlists are just like what they sound like. It's a list of activities that you can play to meet a certain goal or outcome. Perhaps it is a collection of activities. I can show you. If I click on my heart home and go to my playlists and the playlist that I have created, here I have 5 activities that can be done in under 5 minutes. And I can just go here quick. And if I've forgotten how to play, then I click into the activity. There's no prep. Here's my step-by-step instruction for play, my facilitator tip. And when I'm all done, I can ask these reflection questions. And so that's 5 activities to be done in under 5 minutes. However, when we were talking earlier, if I want to do a series of activities that specifically focus on growth mindset, here are those activities. And I recommend that they are done in this particular order for accelerating group development. So here is the body scan, opposite signature, going into growth circles. And then this journal writing acknowledgement is really a series of 4 activities that focus on growth mindset and help reinforce that same idea by scaffolding some of those things. So the same with forming norms. Oh, recent updates. I get to see here is that is today, December 8th, yesterday, my friend Chris Cavert created a new activity. So that is super fun. My friend Lucinda did this, and both of them, actually, Lucinda just had a new book come out, are published authors, and really luminaries or innovators in the experiential education space. And so that came through on my recent updates. The thing about playlists is that you can create playlists, you can even create activities, because I know that teachers are really incredible and they're doing amazing work. And to really harness our collective intelligence and to learn from one another's successes and not have to continually repeat one another's failures, we can harness some of our wins here in this platform. And so there's so many contributors of activities that engage kids well, and we can share them together here. And so I have my favorited playlists that maybe I created, but there's ones that I didn't. And there's activities. I've created activities, but there's other activities that I didn't create. But I get to keep them all here on the palm of my hand, at the tip of my fingers. And I can use it to plan ahead, or I can use it right there in the moment. I often will call for a bio break. So if you need to go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, have a snack, a bio break is a great way to sort of reset and center yourself. But a bio break, and then I can come in here and refresh my memory on what prep I need to know. And here's my step-by-step instructions for play, along with facilitation notes. And here's my reflection questions. And there's no Kikori police If you follow these, fantastic. But if you don't, that's okay. And that's the same with the playlist. You can do the activities in that order or not, because really this isn't baking. It doesn't have to be precise. The most important thing is for you to authentically connect with your students and to do it in a way that keeps them and you engaged. And that was another thing that I found with teaching, is teaching out of a two-dimensional curriculum was really hard. It wasn't entertaining and exciting for me. And so being able to scroll through this database that is super dynamic, um, kept me inspired, and it kept me wanting to try stuff. And I would love to hear about what went well, but also what didn't go well. And sometimes I think it's so interesting how, as educators, we're afraid to try things new, and it could be just like not having that energy or that bandwidth, or not feeling like we're in a safe space with maybe our administration or our grade level teams. But I have found that a lot of my virtual educators, just by nature of how virtual education has started so recently, is that you are all so much more willing to try stuff and suck at it and then learn from it and get back up and do it again, because we learn more from our failures than we ever do from being successful. And so I would love for you guys to go out there and fail hard and fail forward, um, but hopefully to find some success. I would love for you to connect with me on social media. I would love to hear about the things that you try, and really what has worked for you and also what hasn't. So like I said, the chat for this webinar is really a tool for all of us. So feel free to share some of your learnings and your experiences in the chat. And then also, I am here the rest of this webinar for questions. So what questions do you guys all have?
It's great, Bryn. Thank you very much. Folks, if you have any questions at all for Bryn about Kikori or any of the things that she's talked about that, maybe they don't have to do with an app and they have to do with Bryn's extensive background in experiential learning and social emotional learning, please, by all means, those comments are open for you to ask your questions, share your experiences, and join in the conversation.
We often say in experiential ed, like to count to 11 when you're waiting for a response.
Because
Like
that's one more than 10, isn't it?
It's just long enough that it makes you feel uncomfortable, but sometimes being comfortable in that discomfort makes somebody else so that they will speak, because you're cool being quiet.
And it's a little harder to speak here in StreamYard, but again, as long as you're not driving, you're probably in front of something with a keyboard.
Is anybody driving? I mean, not, I suppose. They can't self-identify as a commuter, but
it would be hard for them to let us know, I guess.
I guess a quick plug is that once a month, a lot of the content that I drew from today is in my monthly webinars. And I do have a number of people who attend that are on their commute. And so those webinars are much more interactive. A lot of us have our cameras on and do participate in breakout style games. However, there are people who are on their commute and are off camera and outside of the chat, but do find a value in us keeping them company on their drive. And so I would welcome you to find Kikori on any of the socials, and sign up for those monthly webinars. So we call them Wellness Wednesdays. We've had a lot of success with those. And so there's new content, and we also talk about new features of the app, any district or school-wide deals that we're offering. Sometimes we do pilots for different schools or organizations. I do professional development as a consultant as well. And so some folks have found value in those webinars and brought me in, and we've done some really good teamwork, team building, team bonding even.
Well, and you guys are all over the socials with basically the front part of your web address, Kikori App, like, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Kikori
Everything
App.
is at Kikori App. Yeah, there is a Kikori whiskey, and we were aware of that when we named the app. This is a fun little story. So once upon a time, when Kendra and I had this idea, we were trying to figure out what to name it. And is it a toolbox? Is it a toolkit? Is it a facilitator guide? Is the word facilitator too jargony? Does it turn people off? So what is it? And like, do you have to name it a real word because Uber isn't a real word? And we decided that we wanted to name it after a river. And one of my favorite quotes is that no man steps in the same river twice. So the river is always changing, and so is the woman. But that too often activities like what I've described, people say, oh, well, I've already played that once. And to that, I challenge with, how often do you learn basketball in Phi Ed? I mean, like every year you practice dribbling and passing and shooting because your skills are always growing and you're maturing. And that's how social emotional learning should be, is that you can play and drill those same skills over and over again. But so we knew we wanted to name it after a river, and the name Amazon was already taken.
Yeah,
So
go figure.
we found the name of a river, and the Kikori River is located in Papua New Guinea, which is the most linguistically diverse place on the planet. And so we felt like the river connects people of different languages and backgrounds, but it brings everyone together, just like these activities have the power to do. And so that is how we named our app.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Bryn, I don't see anything happening in the chat, so it's probably time to wrap things up. Folks, thank you all for being here today. We had a nice, tight little group there, and we are looking forward to learning about all the new things that are going to be coming out with Kikori, and that intersection between in-person and online active learning and experiential learning. So thank you very, very much, Bryn Loddick from Kikori.